So in the last class we have started with the serialization process, right? So in that serialization, so it is the process of taking the complicated object and as well as reducing it to the down and the zeros. So in this process of the serialization, it is a one of the process which is going to take the complicated object. Okay, so those objects, it can be reduced to the boolean values like either 0 or 1. Okay, so or both these values, it can be stored in the storage devices. Okay, so if you want to add the any PHP object, so in PHP object we can easily reduce down to a binary string. By using the PHP object, we can easily reduce the binary string value by using the function that is known as a serialization function. So if the string, it can be reconstituted, like whatever the PHP object, we can already reduce it into the binary string by using the serialize function. Again, if the user wants to reconstitute, again if you want to reconstruct that back into the object, it is by using the function that is known as a unserialized function. Okay, so that is we have discussed in the last class. So one of the applications of serialization, so here we are doing the downing value, that is what, reducing the values from zeros and as well as the ones, right? So what is the application of reducing those values? Since each request from the user, it requires the object to be reconstituted. So what is the main advantage? What is the main applications of using the serialization? Is any advantages we are going to get by using the serialization function? Like each request from the user, whatever the user will going to give the request, he require that object to be reconstituted. So once if the user is giving a request, so that particular object is to be reconstituted. Okay, so using the serialization function, we are able to store and retrieve the object. Okay, so one main advantage of using the serialization, by using the serialization, we are able to store and retrieve the object. Okay, so it be a rapid way to maintain the state between the request. So what is the main advantage of using the serialization? It is going to maintain the serialization like a store and retrieve the object. It is easy for the user to store all the values and as well as the request, like liquid whatever the values, it going to be retrieve the object. That's the main advantage of serialization. Okay, so the next topic is the session state. So in that session state, first we'll see that what is the definition for the session state. So in modern web development environment, it provides some type of the session state mechanism. If you may see that in a modern web development technology like web development environment, we will going to some of the different session state mechanism. So we'll see that what are the different states of mechanism. Before moving on to the session state mechanism, this session state is a server based state mechanism. So it is a main definition, like it is a server based state mechanism that lets web applications stores and retrieve the objects of any type of each unique user section. So the session state, it is a web based one of the state mechanism that lets web applications to store and retrieve the object. Okay, so it will going to store and it will going to retrieve the object of any type of the unique user. So for example, there will be different users are using the same session. Okay, so for example, let me take that you are going the online shopping. Okay, so if that user 1, user 2, user 3, three different users are doing the online shopping on the same website like Amazon. If that user 1, he may as required some of the products, so he may going to put into the cart. Again user 2, he has may requesting some of the product, he has going to put into the cart. So in the same manner, it will going to store. Okay, so whatever the products which is required by the user, those products can be stored, those products can be added into the cart. Okay, so if it is added into the cart and whenever the user has required, then easily he can get those object. Okay, so that is we are going to call it as a session state. The session state, it is an ideal for storing the more complex object or the data structure. Okay, so we know that the main thing of the session state, it is going to store the object and as well as the retrieve the object. One real-time example, like if the user is doing the online shopping, he is putting the product into the cart, and again if whenever it is required, he is going to pay the amount and he is going to retrieve the object. Okay, so that is one of the state. So in PHP, it is available via using the $_ variable. So here how we are going to use this particular session state and the session state server based mechanism. Here we are going to use the $_ session variable. Okay, so must use the session_start to enable the section. So if any of the session, if it wants to start, if it wants to restart the function, then this is the function session_start. Okay, so it is to enable the session. So this is the diagram for the session states. If you may look into the session state, here user X, Y, Z. Okay, so these are the three different users are there. So here if user X is requesting some of the shopping, he's doing some of the shopping, and this is the three different memory. So like it is a server memory. Okay, so that is a shopping cart. So for example, user X is requiring to purchase a pen, he is going to put into the cart. Okay, so how is going to put into the cart? He first is going to do the request to the web server. So through that web server is able to put into the cart. In the same manner, if the user Y is has to require to purchase some of the product, you're going to put into the cart. That is in the user session Y. In the same manner, if user session Z, he is required to purchase some of the product, he is going to put into this cart again. Okay, so this is the web server. Okay, so this how the different session states, how the different user they will be have the different perspective manner. So for example, if it is present in the shopping cart, like it is known as a server memory. So at whenever time, so for example, user X at the morning he has put some of the product into the cart. So in some other day or in some other time, so he may visit to that particular website, and that is already stored in the database. So if it is already stored in the database, so that particular values, that whatever he has put it into that cart, it can be differentiated, like it can be serialized into the different files. Okay, so like X is placed in one session size and Y is placed in one more session and X is placed in the one more session. Okay, so these memory whatever the user has using here, so those kinds of memory, it can be stored in the server disk. So whenever the user is required to purchase those things, then he can access the products by using this database. Okay, so this is the diagram for explaining the session state. So you may have to know that whenever you're going to start the session, so you must use the session_start to enable the session. Okay, so this is the accessing session state. So how we are going to access the session? Okay, so this is a simple PHP code. Make a note of this code, accessing the session state. Here we are started with the PHP code. Okay, so we know that to start that session state, we have started with the function known as a session_start. Okay, so next is set is a function. We have to check whether that session is particularly it is belongs to the user or it does not belongs to the user. So whenever the session has been started, by using the function that is set, he has to check whether that particular section is in the log state or not. Okay, so if else there is no in logwood, I guess. Okay, so if that particular session is started, then by using this is set, we are going to check whether the session has been started or not. So if that session has been started, then we closes the PHP code. If the session has been not started, then by default it will going to give you the error message. Okay, so this is how we are going to access the different states, and this is the simple code for checking the session existence. So in this session state, we have to check whether the session has been existed or it does not been existed. In some of the cases, it may be serialization, like some of the products it may be added into the cart or it may not be added into the cart. So we have to check there whether the particular session has been existed or not. So in this we have started with the PHP code. So I am calling the function include underscore once. Okay, so session underscore start is a function which is called to start the session particular value. So what is the particular the page we have taken, that is the shopping cart dot class dot php. Okay, so to this class dot php we have to pass this particular shop cart into this code. Here the session has been started. Always check for the existence of the session object before accessing it. So So whenever you are going to check whether the session has been existed or not, before you are going to checking that whether the session has been existed or not, you have to check the condition. Okay, so what is the condition here? Again, if it is not equal to is set, so here the symbol not is we have used here. Here we are going to checking the is set. So if is set is a function, if it is not equal, if it is not in the session cart. So for example, if any of the user he has not started the session, like he has not added any product into the cart, then the variable can be string, array or object. Okay, so in this particular statement it is going to checking the condition. So if is it is not a set, then the session should be present in the cart or not. So if it is present, like session is already started, the user has started adding their product into the cart. Okay, so then how we are going to declare that particular value, that is by taking that new shopping cart. Okay, so where I am adding all the sessions, because I'm already included the name that is known as a shopping cart. So to this particular where value, like here new is a keyword we have taken, to this name of the keyword, that is a shopping cart, to this shopping cart I am adding this keyword as a new. So that new is going to check the particular product which is present in the cart. So then it will going to give you the output that so the session cart is present. So in this manner or in this way, how we are going to check whether the session has been existed or the session still it has not been existed. So that is also the same thing, it is repeated. Okay, next is the how does the state session work? So look into this diagram. How does the state session usually going to work? So here is the user one, that is a user session X. Okay, so he is requiring some of the request to the server. Okay, so in that server, what is he is requesting? He is requesting like some site.com. Okay, so some URL he is requesting here, and some of the cookie he is passing. Okay, so here it doesn't mentioning any expiry date. Okay, so this cookie it doesn't have any expiry date or expiry time. Okay, so at some particular point of time, at the some time, what the user is doing here is requesting the service to the web server. So in this web server, this is the server memory. So here the shopping cart, so like for example user X is using the Flipkart, so he has to purchase some of the product. Okay, so that like he's using www.flipkart.com. Okay, so then it is logged into the web server, he has connected to the server. So there he will find some of the product, then he's going to add it into the cart. Okay, so when he's added into the cart some session ID, so the corresponding to that product whatever he has added, the corresponding session ID has been generated, or the corresponding session ID has been created here. Okay, and next shopping cart user session Y. So in the same manner here only the user X is present. If other users like user X and followed by the user Z, so corresponding to that user, so this is the corresponding to the user X and this is the corresponding to the user Y. Okay, so the session ID is different, the session ID will be differ from one user to the another user. So in this PHP it is identified with a 32 byte session ID. So whatever the session ID which is generated, so corresponding to that particular user, it is in a 32 byte session ID. So this is how we are going to transmit it back and forth between the user and the server via using the session keys. Okay, so this is the method we are using here. How does the state session will going to work? So how that the state session it will going to work in case of if it is in a transmitted back and forth between the server via using the session keys. Okay, so I will repeat once again. This is how the state session will going to work. So for example, if there will be different users are there like user X, Y and Z, so the corresponding user X is requesting some site. Okay, so some site.com, so then he is requesting to the web server, so that particular if it is purchasing some of the product, the corresponding session ID has been generated. Okay, and same manner this is a different server memories. Okay, so two different server memories for the section Y and followed by the session Z. So here they have given mentioned like a new session PHP. It is assigned in an initially empty dictionary style selection that is can be used to hold any state values for the session. So initially there will be an empty. There is no any values. It can be added into the PHP at the initial stage of the session can going to be work. So that it can be used to hold any of the values when the user is going to request the processing is finished. So whenever the request processing is finished, the session state is saved to some type of the storage mechanism which is known as a session state provider. So in this, when the request is processing, so whatever the request which is processed by the user X to the web server, so that it's completed, then the session state is saved. Okay, so that particular session state, at what type of the session state the user has been included, that particular state has been saved to some of the storage mechanism, like whatever the session id and whatever the some of the storage mechanisms it can be stored. So whenever the request is received for an already existing session, whenever the request is required or it is received for the already existing session, so then it will going to fill out the previously saved session data from the session state provider. So for example, if the user X is requesting to the web server here, so that particular user X, what he will going to do, he will going to purchase some of the product and it was put into the cart. So and the same manner, if some other users, it may going to add some of the products into the cart, so then if it is already available, then it can be mapped, then it can be collected by using the session state provider. Okay, so this is the session storage. So before moving on to the session storage, look into this. It is a diagram for the session storage. It consisting of the different PHP site. Okay, and it is a PHP site for B, that is user A, user B, and user C. So this complete which is present in the other Linux process, like a different operating system which is present here, and the outside which is showing it is a server memory. So in this, it consisting of the different sessions. So in that particular session, it has divided into the different PHP sites here. So this session storage, it is possible to configure many aspects of the session, including where the session files are saved. So in this session state, so one thing it has to be located, or one thing it has to be stored, like if it is possible to configure the many aspects of the session, which is including where the session files are going to be saved. So the decision to save sessions to files rather than in memory address. So the decision to save the session. Okay, so at what state the session has been started, and what state the session has been modified, and what stage the session has been deleted. Okay, so these are the some of the information it can be stored in the sum of the address of the memory. So inexpensive web host, it may sometimes stuff the hundred or even thousands of the mechanism. So with respect to the web host, so it is sometimes, okay, so even hundreds or thousands of the sites will going to contact with this each machine. So if you come into the server, so the server memory, it may be storing not only session information but pages being executed and caching information. So if you may think that is that the server, it's still going to store only the session information, like when the session has been started and when the session has been completed and when the session has been modified. No, not only not that the information which is stored there, in addition to that, it is also storing like the pages being executed and some of the caching information which is also present in the session state. Okay, so here, if that higher volume web applications often run in an environment, so which multiple web servers, which is also called as a web form. So for example, if the higher volume of web applications, so it is nothing but, so the different web servers, like multiple web servers. Okay, so not an a static web server, the multiple of the web servers which is going to be give the higher volume web application. So in some of the situation, though when the session state will not work, work. So at particular some of the time the session still it has not been started, okay, so by some of the users, and due to some of the any server it may service one request for the particular session, so and then completely different server it may service next request for the session. So in this session storage we know that at particular information like what is the cache information and as well as the when the page has been executed, so these are the information which is going to be stored in the session storage. So this is the diagram how the session storage will be stored the information. So this is the load balancer. Here the user X is there, okay, so what the user is doing is requesting the two different request services, okay, so is requesting to the load balancer. So if that load balancer there will be multiple web servers, there will be a multiple web servers which is called as a web forms, okay, if there will be a multiple web servers then we are going to call it as a multiple web forms. If request 1 is passing to some web server and request 2 is passing to some web server, okay, so and these are the different servers which will going to save the information. So in the session state there are effectively two categories of solution to this problem. So what are the two different categories of the solution for this session storage? Configure the load balancer to be session aware and relate all the requests using the session to the same server. So you have to configure the load balancer. So like it is in a load balancer, you have to do the configuration for this load balancer. Whenever you have done the configuring that load balancer, so the session aware, okay, so the related information it has been stored in that particular load value. So when use a shared location to store the session either in a database, memory cache or some other sessions. So here you have to store the session informations, okay, so if you want to store the session information, so use a shared location. So in addition to that, whenever the page has been executed and whatever the cache memory are there, so in addition to that use a shared location to store the session. So this is the diagram which showing you that how the session will go into storage. So this is the load balancer. So this load balancer it can be have the location of the storage, okay, so it is requesting the different web servers, okay, so if that different web servers all sessions stored on the session server, okay, so the different web servers, the different sessions like session X, session Y and session Z, okay, so the different sessions it can be divided in this memory location, okay, so all those sessions it can be combined and it can be placed in the server, okay, so that is connected to the database. So whatever the sessions you have load balancer which is divided the request into the different web server, so in turn again the web server which is connected to this shared session server, okay, so here there will be a database which is connected to this different web servers. Okay, so this is the configuration that in the PHP how we are going to share the location for the session, okay, so if I need to know the particular location for the particular session, so here the sessions, okay, so the sessions has its own location value and it has its own time when it is executed and own time when it is created, okay, so here the session save dot handler, okay, so where that particular session has been stored or where it has been saved in the memory cache, and the path, so at what particular path we have storing the session. So this is the session server 111.211, this is the TCP address, this is the IP address where the particular location of the session has been stored. Okay, so next is the HTML5 web storage, okay, so this completes the session state, okay, so in the session state you have to know the definition for the session state and as well as the diagram like how the different user it can make a communicate with the server, so in turn that web server it can contact with the different database, okay, so and how the session will be created and how that checking how the session will going to be do the check and how that state the session state will going to work, how that session ID the corresponding session ID for the users, the corresponding session ID for the users can be created in case of by using the cookies and as well as the host design. Okay, so under session storage, and next topic is the HTML5 web storage. Okay, so what is HTML5 web storage? So we know that it is in a hypertext markup language. So what is a storage? What is a web storage for this HTML? So the web storage, it is a new JavaScript only API which is introduced in the HTML5 web storage. It is a new JavaScript. Okay, so here it is one of the JavaScript which is the application programming interface. Okay, so here web storage is in a one of the application programming interface which is introduced in the HTML. It means to be a replacement of the cookies in that web storage is managed by the browser. So here we have to do the replacement. So in this web storage, so in the different web pages, if I need to do the replacement, if I need to do the replacement of the cookies, how I'm going to do the replacement? It is by using the browser. Unlike cookies, web storage data is not transported and from the server with every request and the response. So like the cookies, the web storage data, it is not transported. Okay, so web storage, it is a one of the JavaScript, that is an application programming interface which is used here to do the replacement of the cookies. So unlike the cookie, these web storage data, it is not transported to and from the server. So there will be a limitation of the size. Okay, so web storage, it has limited to 4K size barrier. So more than that 4K size barrier, it is not able to store here, and limit of 5 MB, but the browser are allowed to store more per domain. So here we are looking into the coming to the storage mechanism. What is the web storage? So web storage, it is not limited to the 4K size. So just as there were the two types of cookies, that the two types of web storage. In the previously we have seen the two types of cookies, right? Like persistent cookies, what we have seen there. So like that, there will be two different web storages are there. So first one is the local storage and second one is the session storage. So we'll see that what is the local storage and what is the session storage. So in this local storage, it is for saving the information that will persist between the browser session. So if it is in a type of the local storage, it is for saving the information. Okay, so the information can be saved here that will persist between the browser session. But if it is in a session storage, it is for information that will lost once the browser session is finished. What is the difference between these local storage and as well as this session storage? So this local storage, it is for saving the information. Okay, so all the information we are going to store in the local storage, and that it will be maintained between the browser session. When it is in a session storage, it is the information that will be lost, though the information cannot be stored in the session storage as how it is storing in the local storage. Once the browser session is finished, once the browser has completed its task, at that time only the session will be expired. There is no any mechanism for storing of the data. By using this web storage, so we'll show you one code, the JavaScript code for writing the information to the web storage. Here there are the two ways to store the values in the web storage. Okay, so in the web storage, how we are going to store the two different values? So using the set item function or using the property shortcut. Okay, so we'll see that this is the one of the code that how we are going to write in the web storage. Okay, so this is the code which is writing that how we are going to write the web storage. So here in this form, so in this form we have taken the header. Okay, so header has taken as a web storage writer, and we have included the script language. What is the language we have taken? JavaScript is the language. And which type of text we have taken? JavaScript. So here we have to check for the either it can be a local storage or it can be a session storage. Okay, so if we have taken the type of, we have checking the local storage and as well as the session storage. If it is local storage, then if it is assigned to undefined, defined. We are not defined anything in the local storage, and again the session storage if you are not defined anything in the session storage. Okay, so then what the alert message we are getting from the storage, like the storage it is not supported on this browser. Okay, so if that is not the case, then the storage set item, here we have setting the item here. Okay, so if you may look into this session storage dot set item, so within the parenthesis we have taken the, within the double quotes, today's date comma new date. Okay, so the date, new date, it can be written or it can be placed in the today's date. And the session storage artist. Okay, so Martisa is a artist which is stored in the session storage. And in the local storage, one of the name like username is equals to Ricardo, so that name is well stored in the local storage. And next is the document dot write. So document dot write web storage modified. So this is the common thing how we are going to write the web pages. Okay, and we have included the one of the hyperlink like header reference anchor tag we have included, so that it can be make it connected to the other different PHP code. Okay, so if you want to go to the any other storage reader. Okay, so this is one of the mechanism that how you are writing the web storage in by using this header format and as well as the script format. Okay, so first we have included the header format, and next we have started the scripting language. What is the language we have using? That is a JavaScript. So as it is a web storage, in the web storage, so we have to check for the two different conditions like local storage and as well as the session storage. So here I'm checking the session storage and the local storage. So if it is not defined, like if it is undefined, then alert web storage is not supported on this browser. Okay, so then I have to add the date. Okay, so that new date it has been added to the today's date. So and how the session storage has been declared here, name. So that matters is a name which was taken as a favorite artist, and the username has taken as a Ricardo. So those web storage it can be modified. Okay, so these are the different session storages and the local storages which we have done the modified like we have written. So the difference between the session storage and the local storage in this example is that you close the browser after writing and then run the code. Only the local storage item will still contain a value. So below also you have contained one of the code. Okay, so this is the reading the web storage. Okay, so this is the writing the web storage and this is the code for reading the web storage. So if you may look into the above code and as well as the below code, there will be difference we are going to face between the session storage and as well as the local storage. So in this example, if that you close the browser after writing and then run the code. Okay, so you just close that whatever you have written the above code, just close that and you can run the code. So only the local storage item will contain the value. So the value which is added to the session storage it has been deleted, only the value to the local storage it can be taken. Okay, so this is the same diagram like only it is for reading the web storage. So this is the diagram for writing the web storage and this is the code for reading the web storage. So here we have taken the two different attributes, one is the ID and one more is the run at. So where it is running at the server side. And what is the ID we have given in the form? We have given form 1 is an ID. And what is the header? That is a web storage reader. And script language, what is the language here we have taken? That is the JavaScript. Again the same condition like we have checking for the local storage and as well as the session storage. So next, as it is in a reading the web storage, I'm checking by taking the variable. So variable which is equals to today. Today is the name of the variable I am taken to set the date or to check the date, and artist is the name of the variable I am taken to store the favorite artist name. So here document dot write, which is used to store the values like a today value and as well as the name of the artist and as well as the user name. Okay, so this is the way how we are going to read the web storage contents. So first we have taken the two different attributes, that is the id and as well as the run at. Run at is a server. We have included the header format and followed by the scripting language. So first we have to check that local storage and as well as the session storage. So if that web storage, if it is not supported on this browser, then we have to go for the else part. So in that else part I am taken that variable today and also the variable artist. So today is the name of the variable I am taken to set the today's date, and artist is the name of the value which is taken to set the artist name. Next variable user. Okay, so that is the name of the user I am going to declaring here. Next, why would we use the web storage? Complete that. What is the use of the web storage? Then I will stop. Okay, what is the use of the web storage? So in look into the cookies, so that cookies have the disadvantage of being the limited in the size, and also there will be limited to the time. Okay, so it may be going to expire the time and it is not able to use by the further. So potentially disabled by the user, and also if that cookies, if it is disabled by the user, and the other security attacks are being sent in every single request and response to and from the given domain. So web storage is not as a cookie. So like if you look into the cookie, so it is like a disabled by the user, so it is not able to enable, it is not able to use by all the users. Okay, so at some moment of the time. So at some amount of the time, so if that other security attacks, okay, so some of the security attacks, it will going to send in the every single request and as well as the response. So here coming to the web storage, so web storage is not as a cookie. Okay, so it is not like as a cookie. So the replacement as a local cache for the relatively static items available in the JavaScript. So here the different web storage, it is not as like a cookie. So the replacement for the local cache and the relative statics which is going to be available in the JavaScript. So one use of the web storage, it is to store the static content which is downloaded asynchronously, such as the XML part or JSON part. What is the one main advantage of using this web storage? One advantage of using this web storage, so it is used to store the static content, whatever the static contents which is downloaded by the XML part or JSON part from the web service. This reduces the server load. Okay, so one main advantage of this web storage, like the static content which is downloaded by the XML part or it can be a JSON part, so it will going to reduce the sum of the load to the session. So below this is the diagram. Okay, so look into this diagram. So here in this diagram, it is an illustrate the example of how the web storage could be used as the mechanism for reducing the server data request. Okay, so this diagram will illustrate you that. So an example of how the web storage, it will be going to use the mechanism for reducing the data request. Okay, so here in the first, the how the user is going to requesting the PHP page and how that XML, it is retrieved from the Flickr. Okay, so this is the Flickr, how that XML part, okay, so that extended language, how it is retrieving from the Flickr, and this is in a JavaScript. So that again, that XML, it has been stored in the database server, and again it is requesting the one more page. Okay, so this is the one page which is requesting by the user, and this is again the one more page which is requesting by the user. Here again the XML which is retrieved by the web storage, and this is how the browser will going to display the data. Okay, so how the browser will going to display the data by using this mechanism. Okay, so this diagram again we'll discuss in the next